Much for being with us, Ed. I just want to read some of these lines from this New York Times article that obviously this news being spread across the West and picked up by Vladimir Putin. Putin of Russia has been misinformed by his advisor. Secretary of State Antony Blinken acknowledged Mr. Putin has been given less than truthful information from his advisors. The American Secretary of State tisking that he's not getting served well. One of the Achilles heels of autocracies is that you don't have people in those systems who speak truth to power. You've got the Pentagon spokesman says he's not even been fully informed by his Ministry of Defense. He may not fully understand the degree to which his forces are failing in Ukraine. The Times writes that Mr. Putin's ignorance shows a clear breakdown of the flow of accurate information going to the Russian president. The United States has been dead on as far as their intel from the very beginning, and Putin knows it. He's this, as far as PSYOPs goes, this is pretty extraordinary. This guy has got to be becoming even more enraged by the fact that you've got the Pentagon spokesperson, you've got the Secretary of State saying, poor Vlad, he's being lied to by his closest aides, and he's too ignorant to know it.
Yeah, this is some really spectacular trolling that's going on. I mean, we're messing with Putin's head here, and I mean, it was hard to miss the sort of element of almost pleasure on John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesman's face, when he said it must be really hard for Putin because he's getting bad information. So the shoe, you know, after many years of Russian misinformation, disinformation in the West, the shoe is very much on the other foot. Clearly, there is some Schadenfreude to be had from pointing out to Putin that he's not getting accurate information because people are too scared to give him accurate information. I mean, that's saying something quite strong. But second, to clearly have the intention with these coordinated leaks, not just from the US, but from Britain, not leaks, briefings of real-time intelligence, with the intention of further deepening Putin's mistrust of these people. Where are the Western intelligence agencies getting this information from? Who are their moles in my operation? So the messing with Putin's head operation is in full force, and it's quite novel to watch. It's quite interesting to see.
Well, I think, obviously, and you bring up a great point, Ed, it certainly was no mistake that you had U.S. officials saying what they were saying from the Pentagon, Algiers, then you had Britain's official talking in Australia. Yeah, very coordinated by the West. And Applebaum, a man whose legacy has been built on lies, whose power has been built on lies, now being undermined by the lies all around him.
Yes, actually, one of the bases of Putin's regime is his ability to confuse Russians, to build cynicism and apathy by convincing people that not only that they don't know what's true, but that they can never know what's true. There's no truth available. They won't ever be able to find anything out. And the U.S., I think, by having used its intelligence before the war, which, by the way, almost nobody believed at the time, you know, in order to warn people, to illustrate what was going to happen, and having been proved right, now has some credibility, perhaps even in Russia and in Russia's inner circle, in Putin's inner circle, that it didn't have before. You know, one of the best responses to the Russian-style disinformation, which involves this kind of firehood of falsehoods, you know, telling lie after lie after lie, is to show something authentic, to have a different and better story. And that's what the U.S. is trying to provide.
Yeah, you know, so, Ian, it's interesting, even in the negotiations, you have American officials who don't trust the negotiations. They think they're just buying more time. But there's another explanation for it, too. Yes, they're leaving parts of Kyiv. They're withdrawing from parts of Chernobyl, in part because it's a retreat. But they're trying to wrap even their retreat from these areas as some diplomatic give. And it's something that the West and the Ukrainians just aren't buying.
You know, I'm a little bit cautious about calling it a Russian retreat. I think Kirby uses the right word, which is repositioning. It's been a marginal elements of the Russian force that have actually been pulling back from the north. They're probably really repositioning to reset themselves, to resupply themselves, to rest, and possibly to redeploy. So we need to see more action on the ground. And if I could just add, regarding Putin's level of information, he's fallen into an autocracy trap, where he's basically isolated himself from the rest of Russian society, built a protective blanket of intelligence and security forces around him, and that blanket not is only protecting him, but is petrified of him, and so they're unwilling to tell him what he doesn't want to hear. And what the administration is doing is exploiting that. They're not only messing with Putin's head, they're messing with the confidence that establishment has, and the military has, and ultimately the Russian people have in Putin's ability to lead. So maybe we're beginning to see the first signs of a serious strategic communications campaign undertaken by the West. It's long overdue.
And this, yeah, long overdue. And again, what's so interesting is Russians have been spreading lies and misinformation in the West. Obviously, well, for a century, but especially over the past 5 years, and their useful idiots in the West have been repeating those wherever they can. But in this case, it's actually the truth that our intel community is getting out. The truth about a coming invasion, that all of Putin's useful idiots in America, all of Putin's useful idiots in the West, all of Putin's useful idiots in Russia kept denying was going to ever happen. Our intel community's been right time and time again. He leads by lies. He's getting undermined by lies. We're calling him out with truths. Willie, there are parallels here, too. I've talked about it before. One of the reasons why you had the problems, the Russians. Can you show me?
Okay, the pictures of Vladimir Putin.
No, come on. I don't know.
I'm mesmerized by that collage of photographs.
It was the goggles.
I'm trying to talk about Stalin in June of 1941. One of the reasons, and I can't do that with the goggles, one of the reasons that historians say the Germans were able to sweep across Russia as quickly as they were is because, of course, Stalin had his show trials and he had his purges from the early 30s all the way through, the end of the 30s, end of 41. He continued to get rid of anybody that he considered to be a source of power, a challenge to his power. We've seen that with Vladimir Putin as well. And so this is, as Ian said, this is a problem with autocracies. You end up being lied to. I remember a story out of reading history when some of his advisors were showing Stalin a map of Europe. They talked about the Netherlands and Germany moving on the Netherlands. And he said, what about Holland? When did they go into Holland? And everybody just sat there and said, very good question. Very good question. And that is where Vladimir Putin finds himself right now. And it's one of the reasons why Russians are getting just the ground troops are just getting caught in this quagmire that he's completely ignorant of, or at least was.
And he's being completely humiliated in front of the world, not just by the effort of his military, but now by his own ignorance about what he knows and doesn't know about his own country, about his own war effort. And Ed Luce, I guess that leads me to my question to you, which is, as this humiliation of Vladimir Putin grows by the day, and we learn more about how isolated he is and about how poorly the invasion is going for the Russian troops, albeit devastating for the Ukrainian people, what does that tell us about where he may go next? If he really is a man alone right now, I think that scares a lot of foreign policy and military experts.
It does, and of course the chemical weapons conversation's going to keep recurring as Putin's back is to the wall. But, we do have sporadic negotiations going on between Ukrainians and Russians, most recently in Turkey. But there again, there's confusion about what Russians' negotiating position is, and you have contradictory statements from, for example, Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister, and Peskov, the Kremlin spokesman, about what Russia's aims are. And that keys back into what we've been talking about. What are Putin's orders? Who is prepared to ask him to clarify what his orders, what his red lines, what his bottom lines are? And
hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.